What was intended to be Vladimir Putin's grand summer offensive, the decisive move that would set the stage for total control over Ukraine, has turned into a catastrophic failure. Putin hoped this final push would allow him to dismiss all talks of peace or ceasefires and secure what he sought from the beginning. But reality has played out very differently. His plans have unraveled. According to The Economist, Ukraine inflicted around 31,000 Russian troop deaths during this failed campaign, and the losses continue to grow by the day, leaving Putin increasingly desperate. In a deep analysis published on July 9th, The Economist examined the data behind Russia's summer offensive. Since there's no official casualty count from either side, the publication relied on its own war tracking tools that analyze satellite data and battlefield developments. These are combined with estimates from over 200 independent analysts and Western government sources to calculate Russia's daily losses. The resulting figures are grim. Since the full-scale invasion began in February 2022, Russia is estimated to have lost between 900,000 and 1.3 million troops through death, injury, or capture. Among these, the death toll stands somewhere between 190,000 and 350,000. Using those figures, The Economist calculated that since May 1st, when the summer offensive began in earnest, approximately 31,000 Russian soldiers have died. Meanwhile, data on Ukrainian losses is more limited. The Kyiv Independent, citing The Economist, points to research from the Center for Strategic and International Studies, which estimates Ukraine has suffered around 400,000 casualties since the start of the war, with between 60 and 100,000 killed. This comparison is damning for Russia. In less than 3 months, Putin's forces lost nearly half as many soldiers as Ukraine has across the entire war. That equates to a staggering 12,400 Russian deaths per month during the summer offensive. In contrast, Ukraine's estimated monthly death toll ranges between approximately 1,500 and 2,500. This makes it clear the offensive has been a disastrous miscalculation. Putin's strategy has resulted in his forces dying at more than 10 times the rate of Ukraine's. The notion that this was a final push is laughable. According to Russian prisoners, this offensive was described as a last-ditch effort meant to shatter Ukrainian morale and lead to total collapse. Yet this narrative doesn't match reality. Mikhailo Kemechuk, a commander in Ukraine's elite Typhoon unit, says Russia keeps attacking simply because its leadership shows no regard for soldiers' lives. He estimates that 80% of new recruits die for this so-called last push, yet the Kremlin keeps replenishing its ranks from what appears to be a bottomless manpower reserve. Putin fuels this effort with propaganda, convincing both frontline troops and new recruits that if they push hard enough now, the war will soon be over. But even if they captured all the land Putin desires, the conflict would still drag on for years. There is no final offensive, just a relentless sacrifice of Russian lives. The more realistic goals behind the offensive seem to focus on seizing 3 key areas: Sumy, Pokrovsk, and Kostyantynivka. In Sumy, Putin aims to establish a buffer zone to shield Russia's border regions like Kursk, which faced a Ukrainian counteroffensive in August 2024. Despite regaining control there by spring 2025, Putin remains wary. Capturing Sumy would, in his eyes, provide a protective barrier. However, this strategic goal contradicts the last push narrative. A buffer zone is not total victory, it's just a defensive measure, and one that would come under constant Ukrainian assault. And even here, Russia has failed. Pokrovsk, a critical logistics hub in eastern Ukraine, has long been on Putin's radar. It's essential for Ukraine to move troops and supplies to contested Donetsk areas. For Russia, seizing it would sever that lifeline and bring its forces within reach of Donetsk's administrative border. This could grant Putin one of his key territorial ambitions. According to the BBC, around 110,000 Russian troops have been deployed near Pokrovsk. Yet instead of launching a single massive offensive, they're attacking in waves, small unit after small unit, hoping to break through Ukraine's lines using sheer numbers. It's a human wave strategy that's inflicting enormous Russian casualties. Then there's Kostyantynivka. Although less vital than the other targets, it's still strategic. Capturing it would help complete Putin's so-called cauldron strategy, surrounding Pokrovsk on multiple fronts to wear down Ukrainian defenders and eventually breach the city. If successful, Russian forces could flood into Pokrovsk and open new battle lines, but once again Putin's ambitions are clashing with hard reality. One key reason for the offensive's failure is that it's Russia's most rapid push in over 2 years. On July 9th, Russia launched a record 700 drones, many targeting Lutsk, a city near Poland. UKRA News and The Economist both note that this level of loss, 31,000 dead, is higher than the total deaths during Russia's captures of Bakhmut and Avdiivka. This underscores the scale of Putin's current troop commitment. The problem is that today's Russian military is not what it was 2 years ago. Equipment shortages, and poorly trained troops now define the force. The National Security Journal estimates Russia has lost between 10 and 20,000 armored vehicles, leaving soldiers vulnerable to Ukraine's drones, artillery, and gunfire. Many of the troops fighting now are fresh conscripts with minimal training, thrown into battle against seasoned Ukrainian fighters. Their inexperience shows. Many of those killed were little more than cannon fodder. Meanwhile, Ukraine has mounted an impressive defense. The Economist highlights how it has stalled Russia's advances in key areas like Sumy. Though Russia briefly doubled its pace in May to 5.5 square miles per day, it couldn't maintain the momentum. By June, it was clear that no major breakthrough was coming. Experts like Angelica Evans from the Institute for the Study of War said Russia lacked the capacity to launch anything truly new. What we're seeing now is just an extension of the spring campaign. By late June, Ukrainian commander Oleksandr Syrsky reported that Russia's push in Sumy had completely stalled, with front lines stabilizing. That's far from what Putin intended. Instead of winning leverage or gaining territory, his forces have hit a brick wall. According to Russia Matters, between April 30th and July 9th, Russia increased its territorial control by only 479 square miles, from 44,002 to 44,481, amounting to just 19% of Ukraine. That's a loss of more than 64 Russian soldiers for every square mile gained. With 110,000 troops focused on Pokrovsk and another 50,000 on Sumy, the return on this human investment is shockingly low. So what comes next? Putin insists that manpower isn't a problem. He claims Russia is recruiting up to 15,000 more soldiers each month than Ukraine. In May, he even boasted that Russia was adding between 50 and 60,000 troops monthly. But these numbers are questionable. A Ukrainian study cited by the New Voice of Ukraine suggests the actual daily recruitment is much lower, perhaps half of what Putin claims. Moreover, these new recruits are poorly trained. Putin's solution to the summer offensive's failure is more of the same, throwing fresh bodies into the grinder. Desperate to bolster his numbers, he's even turned to North Korea. In 2024, North Korea sent around 10,000 troops to help recapture Kursk. Now, according to Ukrainian intelligence and the Japan Times, 30,000 more could be on the way. Whether they remain in Russia to free up Russian troops or enter Ukraine directly, their presence only deepens Putin's reliance on North Korea. But even with this added manpower, Russia's territorial progress remains dismal. The Economist calculates that Russia is capturing only 15 square kilometers per day, about the size of Los Angeles airport. Over the past year, each dead Russian soldier has earned the Kremlin just 9 acres. At this pace, it would take nearly 90 years to conquer all of Ukraine. And still, Putin insists this is the final push? It's absurd. The propaganda has collapsed under the weight of reality. To make matters worse for Putin, Ukraine's position is strengthening. Though US military aid was paused briefly over concerns about missile stockpiles, that pause has now been lifted. Ukraine will once again receive vital munitions, including Patriots. Former President Donald Trump claims a deal with NATO has been made where the US sends weapons and NATO pays for them. Secretary of State Marco Rubio confirmed this effort, noting the potential for redirected shipments of defense systems to Ukraine. In the end, this cooperation between the US and NATO is a serious blow to Putin's ambitions. He believed the US aid pause was a strategic advantage and thought he had weakened NATO unity. But now he faces a reinvigorated Ukraine, determined Western support, and a collapsing offensive that has claimed tens of thousands of Russian lives for virtually no gain. This summer, which was supposed to mark Russia's triumph, has instead exposed the emptiness of Putin's war strategy. 31,000 dead and counting, proof enough of a war gone disastrously wrong.